slides, but this is just a basic principle on which the counters work. This is a light scatter principle, which actually shows a forward scatter as well as a sideward scatter. I'm not going into details, but a laser beam which interrupts the cell, which then scatters the light. And based on the type of scatter, the photocell detector will give you the answer whether what cell it is based on the computerized interpretation. Now, there is a forward and a side scatter. What is the function of the forward scatter? Is it correlates to cell volume and size. So how big the size is, what is the volume? And here the side scatter actually looks at the degree of internal complexity of the cells, that is the granules and nucleus, what kind they are. So that is how you can now get differential counts. You can get nucleated RBCs, you can get reticulocytes, you can get retic content of hemoglobin, and many other complicated stuff can be now made out through a counter. Now we all are aware that a complete blood count is something which we almost always simply order for every patient that might come to us. And it's a routine evaluation that we do. But what we do is just a cursory appraisal. By that, what do we mean? We just look at three aspects: the hemoglobin, the WBC count, platelet count. After looking at these three, we are satisfied and we tell ourselves, okay, this is a normal CBC and we need not worry. But there are so many other things which are seen in this. As you can see, there are many other written digits which we totally ignore because we think that is not our job, that's not a pediatrician's job. But actually, if you simply learn an interpretation in a simple manner of all these parameters, you can make a world of difference in making your diagnosis. Also, these are totally sidetracked. They are actually on the side, so we sidetrack them. So these are important histograms and scatterograms that give us a lot of meaningful information, and we should not just ignore them. We'll learn one by one what is the significance of each of these. Now, the basic hematological parameters we know are hemoglobin, hematocrit, RBC count, WBC with differential, either 3-part or 5-part. When we say 3-part, it does not differentiate between the eosinophils and the basophils separately. It takes it into granulocytes, platelets, and derived parameters which are RBC indices like MCV, MCH, MCHC, RDW, MPV, platelet distribution with platelet low cell ratio. Now all these parameters we will discuss one by one as we see the CBCs. And then you have the histograms or the graphs and the scatterograms that I showed you on the WBC parameter. Now, I think someone has used the whiteboard and marked it, so this is persisting on the slide, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It is not distracting me. I hope it's not distracting you all. So when you look at a CBC on a 3-part analyzer, it gives you 18 parameters. It is called 3-part because the leukocytes are only distributed into 3. They do not distribute it into 5. And there you have eosinophils, monocytes and basophils together. Sorry, not neutrophils. Neutrophils are separate and lymphocytes are separate. Someone is using the whiteboard by mistake. Yeah, it's gone. Thank you. So then you look at the parameters that are here: WBC count, RBC count, hemoglobin, hematocrit, all the RBC indices, platelet count, the white cell histogram with a white cell differential in percentages, in absolute. So you have percentages 31, 6.8, 62, and you have 1.8, so 1800, 400, and 3600. Accordingly, the white cell count, which is 5,800, can be added up by this. Absolute plus it gives you neutrophils, lymphocytes percentage. And here you have the RBC histogram where you calculate the RDW. And RDW is calculated in 2 ways, SD and CV. I'll come to that later. And that gives you the degree of anisocytosis of the red cells. Whereas the platelet curve tells you again about the distribution width, the MPV. It gives you the MPV written below, and the platelet large cell ratio. So the platelet large cell ratio basically tells you how much immature platelets are there. I think this is the basic thing on three-part differential. This is a classification on the histogram of the various white cells. As you can see here, you have debris and platelet clumps. Here you have the lymphocytes. It's based on the size. So lower size cells come here. Then you have the monocytes mainly, and then you have the granulocytes. So all the basophils will come probably here, the neutrophils here, and eosinophils over here, because eosinophils are the largest. Now, when you look at WBC, RBC, and platelet over here, this is a typical normal looking histogram where you have, these are the lymphocytes, these are the monocytes, very few, these are the granulocytes, and eosinophils, again, very few. So you can read here that the WBC count is 6,400 with lymphocytes being 1,800 and granulocytes being 4,100. Here you see the RBC count. RBCs are good. The RDW is 12.7. It is normal RDW, a normal width, with a few large cells seen here. But that's normal. And you have platelets which are looking normal. So this is all a normal curves that you see. Now let's look at this one. This is a typical normal CBC from our center. It's by a technician who is 30-year-old female. So you can see 12.5 gram hemoglobin. See the histogram of the RBC. So you have RBC parameters here. You have the RBC histogram here. You can decide to put it like this. You have the WBC parameters here. You have the WBC scattergram here. You have the platelet parameters here, and you have the platelet histogram here. So if you look at this is typical 13.5 RDW, which is normal, bang normal. Normal white cell count, normal neutrophils and lymphocytes 51 and 34%, and a normal platelet count with a normal MPV. MPV should be between 7 and 11, so it is 8.3. And we really do not look much at the platelet distribution with, it has not got much significance, but it is also normal. So everything, because if you see the reference ranges, you will know it is normal. So this is how on the scatterogram, you will get the lymphocytes, monocytes. Now this is the complexity of the cell, and this is the size of the cell. So based on the size, it will come on the higher axis, and based on the complexity, it will come on the right side. So most complex are eosinophils, and they are also quite large, but neutrophils also fall in the similar pattern. Whereas lymphocytes are simple, non-complex, and smaller in size compared to monocytes. So monocytes are also less complex, but they are larger than lymphocytes. So here you have lymphocytes, here you have monocytes, here you have neutrophils, and here you have eosinophils. I mean, just if you look at the scatterograms, you will know. Now, I'm not going to go much in detail of this 5-part, very hi-fi analyzer. This is from Hinduja Hospital. I've borrowed these slides from Dr. Kunal Sehgal when he was working at Hinduja. So this gives you flags: blast, immature granulocytes, left shift, atypical lymphocytes, anisocytosis, anemia. So these flags help you to know what I have to look at more in detail. But otherwise, the parameters that you get are all similar. You also get eosinophil, basophil separate and monocyte separate, whereas these three were clubbed together in our counter. You also get a retic percentage and a retic count. You get the immature retic with low frequency, moderate frequency, and high frequency percentage. You get the platelet large cell ratio. So you know whether there are large immature platelets. You get the IPF, which is here, IPF percentage. You can get the retic hemoglobin content. You can get the immature granulocyte percentages. You can get nucleated RBCs, that is the normoblast. So what more could one ask for? But let me again say, all this is by a dumb automated machine, and therefore it can never replace our eyes and our brains, and we should still continue correlating this with the clinical suspicion that we have, as well as what we find on the smear and further testing. Now coming to RDW, as I told you, we'll talk about it a little later. So you have two ways of measuring RDW. Basically, this is the histogram of the RBCs based on their size, mean cell volume, and frequency of occurrence. So majority of them will lie in the normal range of 80 to 95 femtoliters, and some will be smaller, some will be larger. So it will give a splayed Gaussian curve. Now, RDW is the red cell distribution width. Now, if you look at the CV, it is actually calculated as a ratio of the width of the curve at one standard deviation divided by MCV. So this width is at one standard deviation of the curve and divided by MCV. Whereas the RDW SD is the width of the curve alone, measured at the 20% frequency level of the curve. So this is 20% frequency level, and this is at the one standard deviation. So this is what one standard deviation is 50. Now, this is what is the difference between CV and SD. CV looks at MCV also, whereas SD does not take into account MCV at all. But more often than not, I rely on CV because it's easier to understand. It's a simpler number, smaller number. Therefore, I prefer to use a CV. Now, let's look at how would we interpret CBC in a patient who's anemic or pale. So we know that based on MCV, we divide the anemias into micro, macro, and normocytic, and hypochromic based on the MCH and MCHC. I'm not going into details. It is reflected on the slide. Now, let us look at when we have an MCV available to us and an RDW, how we can decipher the different diagnoses. So if your RDW is normal and your MCV is low, it is a thalassemia trait more likely. Whereas if normal RDW but high MCV suggests aplastic anemia. And it also suggests lead poisoning sometimes if the MCV is not yet reduced and IDA has not yet occurred. When you have a high RDW, you must suspect iron deficiency in a microcytic anemia, and early IDA can sometimes have a normal MCV with a little high RDW. So RDW changes even before MCV changes. And of course, newborns will have a very high MCV with a high RDW because they are already changing their type of cells when they are born. Then vitamin B12 deficiency will definitely have a high RDW with a high MCV. So if we remember vitamin B12, folate both. So if we remember that high RDW is generally associated with nutritional anemias, common ones. So iron deficiency if low MCV, and vitamin B12 and folate deficiency if high MCV. If we remember just this much, we would be able to decipher, and also remember to differentiate thal trait from iron deficiency. Both will have a microcytosis. You'll have normal RDW in thal trait, high RDW in iron deficiency. These two things we must remember. When you have thalassemias, that is the homozygous or double heterozygote, or those who manifest clinically with blood transfusion requirement, then remember that they won't have a normal RDW because they have varied sizes of cells. They have a very wide RDW. I'll show you some CBCs of some cases, and that will help you to really know how it makes a difference when it is a homozygous thalassemia. Let's look at microcytic anemias now. Microcytic, we all know there are 5 differential diagnoses. Again, I'm not going into details. Iron deficiency, anemia, chronic disease, thal trait, sideroblastic, and lead poisoning. Do not concentrate on this at present because this gives a different type of clinical picture, whereas all these may not have very different clinical features. Now let's look at this CBC. 2.9 gram hemoglobin, 2.76 RBC count, millions per cubic millimeter. Hematocrit low, MCV is 46, and you have a RDW which is 23. Now I just told you high RDW, low MCV, anemic patient. It suggests obviously an nutritional deficiency of iron. So we will see this. This was the smear of this child, but there was a hypersegmented neutrophil. So don't miss that. When you see a smear, you must also look at other parameters, other features of other cells. When we looked at iron studies in this child, we found low iron, very high TIBC, and a very low transferrin saturation. Now, as you can see, this is typical iron deficiency anemia. But because we found a hypersegmented neutrophil on the peripheral blood, we also did, and we did the ferritin, which was 1.7, which was very low. So this was definitely iron deficiency, but we also looked at the vitamin B12 in this child, and it was low. I've not got the report here. I've probably removed it, but it is low. So there can be a combined deficiency in a patient, which you may then miss if you do not look at the peripheral smear. And also remember that when you have B12 with iron deficiency, you're not going to treat with iron first. You're going to treat with B12. And therefore, it's important to review the smear yourself. Now look at this one. This is also anemia with a RBC count 5.07. You saw in the previous one, I'll just again go back. What was the RBC count? 2.76. So it was definitely low. Now here it is not low. It is near normal or slightly on the higher side. And you have low MCV and you have an RDW which is slightly increased, not majorly increased. So this is the smear of this child. And this shows again microcytic picture, but there are some target cells. Now this should prompt you that the RBC count is on the higher side. If you do the Menzel's index, it will come. MCV is 52. So 52 by 5 will come to less than 13, and that will suggest that this is thalassemia trait. So keep in mind these pointers and look at it accordingly. And also in the smear, presence of target cells, no anisocytosis. You see, the cell sizes are not very varying. They're all small. They are uniformly small because they're genetically small. And that is the difference between IDA and thal trait. And if you see, this was the HPLC of this patient and 6.2A2, which is thalassemia trait. So it is typical how to diagnose a thal trait from an IDA. Now look at this CBC. You have 1.83 RBC count. You have a 6.7 gram hemoglobin. Look at the RDW. It's 30.4, very high, CV, and 89 by SD. So it is definitely wide. You can see here, very wide graph. And if you look at, so this is also not significantly microcytic, but it is microcytic, 72. And if you see the WBC count, it is 27,000. But look at the scattergram, it is weird. It has given only blue color. In all our other CBCs, we had different colors. So when you have nucleated RBCs, it gives you a patch like this. It does not help to the counter.
Hello,
Hello.
ma'am. I think, ma'am, you are not audible.
Madam's voice is
She is not audible. I think there is some
yeah,
problem with network
yeah,
also.
yeah. The problem her net, I think.
Hmm.
Preeti, can you call madam? And tell-
Ha ha. I'm doing that, sir. Hello. So having some issue with network. Um, Hello.
Hello. Preeti. Hello. Hello.
नेटवर्क कनेक्शनचा प्रॉब्लेम आहे तर दुसरं कनेक्शन जॉईन करताय.
मॅडम
एक
ना?
5 मिनिट 2-3
हो, हो.
मिनिटांमध्ये कनेक्ट होते.
हो, हो, हो.
शिशिर,
हां, हां, हां.
अरे आता काय फक्त 100 पार्टिसिपेंट्सनाच अलाउड आहे का आता?
हो, होय. हे एवढे अँटिसिपेटेड नव्हते.
हा.
बट
नाही म्हणजे आपले केएपीचे मेंबर्स काही जॉईन होऊ शकलेले नाही आहेत.
होय, होय,
आपल्या
होय.
केएपीच्या
आणि
याच्यावरती
आपण
काहीतरी दिसत आहे.
नाही रेकॉर्डिंग केलंय.
हा हा
रेकॉर्ड
हा, ठीक आहे ठीक आहे, मग काय
हां,
प्रश्न नाही.
हां.
चालेल, ओके.
बघूया ना सर. हो.
Yeah. So we were looking at this
Yeah.
CBC.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there was a network issue
No,
at
no
my
problem,
side.
ma'am. No
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
No problem.
yeah. So this was this finding that we talked of normoblastemia, and in this child we looked at the smear, and the smear showed plenty of nucleated RBCs. These are all nucleated RBCs that you are seeing. These are not WBCs. This is WBC. This is a WBC. This is a lymphocyte. But these are all nucleated RBCs. As you can see, there's a ring of cytoplasm which is similar to RBCs. That is how you make out a nucleated RBC. Each one similar to RBCs. That's why they're merging in the RBCs. These are late normoblasts. So when we looked at their HPLC, you can see this is a child's HPLC, 6-month-old, 88.5% of HbF, which suggests a homozygous beta thalassemia. And if you look at the parents, the mother had a 6.2 A2 concentration, that means thal trait, and the father also had a 6.5 concentration of A2, that means again a thal trait. So both father and mother are beta thalassemia trait, and the child is a thalassemia homozygous. And this is how it's easy to make out on a CBC if very wide RDW. So if we go back to that RDW and CBC, you can really make out 30.4 RDW, which we don't see even in an iron deficiency. And of course, anemia was present, microcytic anemia, but they will, because of high RDW, is because they also macrocytes. You see here that are more than 100 femtoliter cells also, quite a bit. And therefore, you do not really get a very low MCV in untreated thalassemias. So this is how you diagnose thalassemia major. Now coming to normocytic anemias, we know again the differentials: congenital hemolytics, acquired hemolytics, acute blood loss, splenic pooling, chronic renal disease. All these conditions will give you an normocytic anemia. Now we'll just take one example of this child who was a young infant at about 12 months. He came to us with a small liver, spleen palpable, and anemia. And he had this peripheral smear showing spherocytes. Osmotic fragility was increased. And if you look at his, oh, I'm sorry, I had a slide before this, but that's not showing. Anyway, I think we'll forget about that. There was a CBC which showed a high MCHC. Somehow I don't know whether it has got somewhere else. So if you look at normocytic anemias, you must keep in mind the congenital hemolytic anemias, which are non-thalassemia. Thalassemias are microcytic. But the other hemolytic like G6PD, spherocytosis, these will be normocytic anemias, enzymopathies, they all will be normocytic anemias. Coming to macrocytic, if there is a megaloblastic macrocytic anemia, it is mainly nutritional deficiency. Sometimes some hereditary conditions also may figure. And here you will have typical hypersegmented neutrophils, macrocytes, macroovelocytes, and megaloblast in the bone marrow. Now let's look at this CBC of a boy who was 13-year-old who came to us with anemia, 6.1 gram hemoglobin, 1.59 RBC count, 113 MCV. Obviously, it is a high MCV, very high. And if you look at the RDW, it was 18.2, but he had a little low white cell count with neutrophils adequate, but total count was low. And you had a little lower side normal platelet count. So when you have something like all three cell lines affected with a very high macrocytic anemia, but the other cell lines are not as much affected, then you think of a megaloblastic anemia for sure. So here you have an RDW which is 18.2 increased. Actually, it is looking even much more increased if you see. And it's a shift to the macrocytic curve. So shift to the right of the RBC histogram. This is typical of a nutritional megaloblastic. So this was a smear where you saw macrocytes, macroovelocytes, you saw hypersegmented neutrophils. Platelets were not very many. They are not huge clumps on the smear. And you see Cabot rings in them. You see basophilic stippling. And this typically happens in a nutritional megaloblastic anemia. And if you see, we did his vitamin B12 level and it was low. And so this was B12 deficiency. But if you have macrocytic anemia without megaloblastic marrow, that is like an aplastic marrow, this is a typical empty spaces in the marrow, then you think of aplastic anemia, Diamond-Blackfan anemia, hypothyroidism, and other conditions which can cause infiltrative aplasia. So when you have infiltration with leukemic cells, with storage cells, also you may have a macrocytic anemia in the peripheral blood. So let us look at one of the CBCs. Again here, hemoglobin is 9.8, MCV is 91.9, RDW is normal. Now remember, RDW normal with mild macrocytosis suggests a bone marrow production problem, not a megaloblastic. And WBC was 1000 with, you see the distribution on the scatterogram? These are neutrophils, these are lymphocytes. How densely the lymphocytic area is seen, and therefore this is high lymphocyte count. You can see 76% lymphocytes. That means there is lack of neutrophils. That means production is a problem. And platelets were only 12,000. So this suggests that this is probably a aplasia. And see the MPV is 6.4. Again, higher MPV is productive marrow. Lower MPV is marrow not producing the platelets. So typically this is an aplasia seen in this patient. If we look at this one, again a low hemoglobin 6.5, 93 MCV, that is on the higher side. RDW is near normal. You can see it is a small curve. And WBC this time is low. It's only 1900. And you can see again, what is the distribution here? You can see hardly any neutrophils, mainly lymphocytes, 78% lymphocytes, 20% neutrophils. And you can see that this patient also has 26,000 platelets and an MPV, which is normal, which is not high. So if not a high MPV and you have low white cells with lymphocytosis and you have MCV high with a hemoglobin which is low, with RDW which is near normal, then again you must consider that this could well be a leukemia or an aplasia. So it is a production problem. So remember that production problems will give high MCV with normal RDW, near normal RDW. Now sometimes you get high RBC count or a high hematocrit. That could be in dengue due to hemoconcentration, but this should only be interpreted in the light of a serial CBC, not the first CBC. Only when you do repeated CBCs, very often we do 6 hourly CBCs in a dengue patient who's sick. And in that, if you see hemoconcentration, you can 100% be certain that there is a third spacing. In dehydration, you can get similar problems. In kidney diseases with high erythropoietin production, most of the times you have low erythropoietin production, so you will have lower. And in various diseases where you can have a polycythemia, like in a congenital cyanotic heart disease, in a cor pulmonale, which are blue bloaters, and pulmonary fibrosis. So these are the conditions which you will keep in mind if you have polycythemic numbers. And polycythemia vera, which is very, very, very rare in children. Smoking again is rare in our adolescents, though now it's coming up. Low number of RBCs or low hematocrit indicates anemia, which we are talking of already, as there could be various conditions: nutritional anemia, blood loss anemia, anemia of chronic infections and inflammation, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, bone marrow failures. These will all have low number of RBCs. A THAL trait will have a high number of RBC, bone marrow infiltration. Now, when you do a CBC, you can't interpret it without a peripheral smear examination being also seen. And a retic count is the other thing which you have to look at if you want to make some sensible interpretation of the blood counts. For example, you see a patient who is macrocytic and has a borderline RDW, and you see the retic count is low, you know that it is probably aplasia. This is how an ideal peripheral smear should look, with a tailing at the end or a tongue at the end, which is thinner than the base. And it should never cover the full slide. It should always start somewhere here and end somewhere here. So 1/3 or 1/4 of the slide, this side and this side should be empty. So this is a normal peripheral smear where you have RBCs with a 1/3 pallor, less than 1/3 pallor. You have a neutrophil, you have a lymphocyte, you have platelet clumps. This is a megaloblastic. I already showed you basophilic stippling. Then this, you have sickle cells, typically irreversibly sickled cells. Also, you must look at in the smear. Target cells, as you can see in this smear, which can be in thalassemias, hemoglobinopathies, hemoglobin SC disease, liver diseases, spherocytes, which you can see in various conditions like hereditary spherocytosis is obvious, but autoimmune hemolytic anemias, in burns, in sepsis with Clostridium difficile, these all can cause spherocytes in the smear. This is a typical picture of thalassemia or a homozygous or a hemoglobinopathy, where you have a very bizarre looking RBC morphology with large cells, small cells, broken cells, target cells, schistocytes, and normoblasts. So this is the hallmark. Sometimes you also see good polychromasia in a thal intermedia. So here you can see normoblast, polychromasia, and bizarre looking cells with broken cells. Now, this typical broken cells are seen in TTP or HUS. You can see helmet cells, broken cells. Here you can see another one. Here you can see another one. So these are typical of a TTP smear. And this type of clumping, this is not rouleau. Rouleau will look only like this, a single line of RBCs. But when you see clumping like this, you must suspect autoimmune hemolytic anemia. In fact, one patient, we diagnosed autoimmune hemolytic anemia only because we saw the smear and we found clumping, and then we did the Coombs test. So it can really be of great help. Then coming to reticulocyte counts, which we do using supravital stains. This is how they look on the smear, the retics with a reticulin pattern. And this is a normal count, 1 to 2%, but this is an increased reticulocyte count. Many reticulocytes seen in one smear, but you do not count just by looking at one field. You have to look at 1,000 red cells and look at the number of retics present in 1,000 red cells, and then divide by 10, and that will give you percentage. Now, even when you get a reticulocyte percentage, you do not directly jump to conclusions, because retics have to come up as a response to anemia. Now, are they really coming up enough? Then the bone marrow is producing enough red cells. If they are not coming up enough as we desire or expect them to come up with anemia, then you have to worry about whether the reticulocytes, whether the bone marrow is really producing RBCs at all, and whether it is a production problem or an aplasia. So how do we make out that? So we need to calculate the retic production index. How do we do that? We calculate first the retic index is retic count into hematocrit upon normal hematocrit. This is what we also call corrected retic count colloquially. And by that we mean correct the retic count to the patient's hematocrit. So if patient's hematocrit is low, you expect the retic count to be high. But when you calculate the retic index, it does not come out to be high. So corrected retic count is like if I have a patient with 25 hematocrit and the retic count is 3, I multiply 3 by 25 upon 45. So here you will get 5 upon 9 and 3, so 3. So 5 by 3, it comes to something like 1.6 retic count. So it was 3 and I was thinking it is high, but 1.6 is normal. So it is not really high, and therefore we are not suspecting hemolysis, and we are not having probable clear answer to whether the patient's bone marrow is producing adequate or not. Now, if you look at the next step, you look at the hematocrit, and there is a correction, maturation correction factor, which you have to multiply to the, which you have to apply to the retic index to get the retic production index. So retic production index is when you have retic of 5 and you have a hematocrit of 25 and 45 is taken as the normal hematocrit, then when you divide this by 2, because your hematocrit is 25 and the maturation correction is 2, so when you divide this by 2, you get 1.4. Anything below 1 suggests marrow failure. Anything above 3 suggests hemolysis. Anything between 1 and 3 suggests normal. So retic production index actually gives you a clear idea of what is the situation of the marrow. Similarly, if you look at the immature retic fraction, immature reticulocytes, if they are low and your reticulocytes are also low, that is RPI is low, then it is aplasia. If they are normal and your retic index is also normal, RPI, then it is normal. If you have low retic count and you have a normal immature reticulocytes, it is dyserythropoiesis because the marrow is trying to produce, but it is not producing effectively. Then you have hemolysis, wherein you have a very high immature retic fraction and you have a high reticulocyte. And repopulating marrow will have a high immature reticulocytes, though yet the peripheral blood reticulocytes have not come up. So remember, these are the different things that you would see in a retic count. Now we'll go to the platelets. Thrombocytosis is often seen in iron deficiency anemia, hemolytic anemia. Now, is it true thrombocytosis in iron deficiency anemia? It could be, it need not be, because erythropoietin and thrombopoietin share some properties and therefore they can stimulate each other's cells, and therefore you can have an increased platelet count because erythropoietin is increased. Hemolytic anemia also you can have similarly increased thrombocytosis. Or vitamin E deficiency, when there is bleeding, obviously it's a feedback to the marrow. And in collagen vascular disease, it's an acute phase reactant. Also in iron deficiency, sometimes it is not truly high. If you look at the smear, the platelets are not high, but the counter gives you a high report. That is because there are extreme microcytic RBCs which get counted by certain counters as platelets. But if you have a high-ended counter, the Coulter counter, which uses the optical method to count the platelets, then you will not find this happening because of the small RBCs. But if truly they are high, they will show it high. In splenectomy also, and falsely, as I told you, because of the microcytes. Now let's look at this. See, if microcytes are overlapping with the platelet size, then they will get counted as platelets. Sometimes even debris, which are small, can get counted as platelets. So this can interfere with your platelet counts. Thrombocytopenia again can be falsely low on a counter. It can be immune mediated, DIC or others that we all are aware. Now, if you look at this one particular example, which I want to talk about, it's very interesting. If you see, the platelet count here was 47,000. White cells are 11,900. And you are seeing something here which is in the WBC histogram, which is probably the clump platelets which are getting caught as WBCs. And here you are getting a lower count. This was an EDTA anticoagulated sample. Some of us can have EDTA antibodies. When we have EDTA antibodies in our blood, then the EDTA that you have used in the bulb for anticoagulating the blood does not work efficiently because it gets consumed by those antibodies, and therefore you develop microclots, and these microclots get shown here as a WBC. Whereas when you look at the same sample anticoagulated with citrate, now the WBC count has gone down because that clumped platelets is not getting counted, and the platelet count has become 174. Of course, a simple smear would have given you the same answer, but probably this was a better method to look at it. So we don't want to go into details of all the conditions which can give thrombocytopenia. Most of us are aware, and we are dealing with it day in and day out. We'll just go through some of the CBCs which will give an illustration of how we interpret the thrombocytopenia. Here you have anemia which is mild, RDW which is 17, not very high, and MCV which is near normal, 77. You have white cells which are looking good. You can see the scatterogram, lymphocytes, neutrophils, eosinophils, monocytes, everything seems good. This is debris, don't count this, this is artifact. And this is a low platelet count, 15,000. Now, you might argue with me, ma'am, the MPV is 7.5, so this is a hypoplasia. But other cell lines are not affected, first of all. Secondly, this patient has acute onset thrombocytopenia. She's a healthy child. She has no liver, spleen, no lymph nodes, nothing. So I'm suspecting ITP. Then why would the MPV be low is the next question that comes to the mind. The MPV can be sometimes spuriously low when your platelet count is very low. So do not rely on MPV in a thrombocytopenia. So you have to rather look at the smear. And what does the smear show? It shows large platelets. This is the actual smear of the same child showing large platelets. So when platelets are large and the patient has other normal morphology with neutrophils, lymphocytes, everything fine, she's a healthy child, our diagnosis is obviously ITP. Coming to immature platelet fraction, of course, in low platelet count, when there is increased destruction or utilization of platelets, then increased IPF will be seen. So it suggests a marrow which is producing, but have a destruction which is happening at the peripheral level like ITP or hypersplenism. Whereas when you have decreased production, you'll have a reduced IPF. When there is bone marrow regeneration happening, for example, a patient who is now, engrafting, the first indicator of marrow regeneration will be increased IPF. So it's a very good indicator. It's an FDA approved, parameter now on the counters to be used for looking at these aspects. So again, I'm going to show you Hinduja's counter, which is showing an IPF normal range derived to be 0.7 to 4.3. Now this is one of the patients they had in whom they followed the IPF. This was a case of dengue. And you see platelets were low, IPF was also low, platelets were further lowering, IPF was increasing. What does that suggest? There is peripheral consumption and not a production problem. So not to worry too much. And therefore, they went on continuing regular treatment of fluid therapy and observing the patient and looking at the platelets. Now you see, when it was 39,000, the IPF was 13.9. It was increasing steadily with dropping platelet counts. And here there's a shift. The platelet count has risen a little, IPF has dropped. So when the IPF starts showing a downward trend, you can relax because now the platelets are going to go up. So here IPF was increasing trend and suddenly a downward trend and the platelets start rising. So it can be a very good omen in a patient of dengue. Looking at leukocyte counts, just want to know, Dr. Shishir, can I go on for another 15-20 minutes? Preeti?
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead. No problem.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Prasanna. When we look at leukocytes, we all think of leukocytosis as the magic thing to tell us about infection. But if you look at this data, this is evidence based, that with temperature of about 38.5 degrees, a high count of 15,000 and above, only 18% sensitivity, 18% patients would have bacteremia. 20,000 count, 25% would have. 30,000 count, 40% would have. So what about the remaining 60%? You can't just stamp that leukocytosis is bacteremia. We have to look at other causes, and we should keep our minds therefore open. Now, if you look at various white cell disturbances that can happen, leukopenia, neutrophilia, morphologic changes in neutrophils, Pelger-Huet anomalies, eosinophilia. I'm not going into details. So these all can be present. Here you can see band cells, so immature cells. Neutrophilia can give you immature cells along with an infection. Then you can see a lot of neutrophils here, which are with band cells again. But let's look at leukopenia. Leukopenia can have neutropenia or lymphopenia. In COVID times, we need to worry about lymphopenias. Lymphopenia is a hallmark of COVID infection. In severer infections, the lymphopenia is overwhelming, whereas in milder infections, it is not as marked. This is what the latest studies which have been published recently have shown. But you must keep in mind, if you have neutropenia, which is persisting, think of cyclic or severe congenital neutropenia in young babies, reticular dysgenesis or SCID in young babies, then certain other constitutional aplastic anemias. All these can be seen in young infants, not in older people. But in older people, if you see leukopenia, it can be mainly viral infections, certain bacterial infections, or overwhelming sepsis, when the storage pool gets totally depleted, and therefore you see neutropenia. Neutrophilia, on the other hand, as I told you, can be in bacterial infections, but also in viral infections. We have this misnomer that only lymphocytosis should be present. It's not necessary. It's more common to have lymphocytosis rather than neutrophilia, but it can be present. Dole bodies can be seen in viral illnesses, burns, massive trauma, cancers. Toxic granules are commonly seen in bacterial infections, viral infections. Vacculation can be seen. Now coming to this one, CBC. Here you had a WBC count of 11,800 with a hemoglobin of 7 grams with a platelet count of 279. But look at the WBC histogram. What is remarkable about this? We saw earlier the histogram of WBC. It showed a nice lymphocyte peak. Then it showed a little more small plateau. Then it showed us a small peak of neutrophils, which was not very steep, which was a moderately high amplitude, not very high. See, this is a high amplitude and abruptly coming down. This suggests that there is a shift to the left. That means all the cells which are immature have been thrown into the circulation. And correctly so, because you see here, bands were there, metamyelocytes were there, and there must be many more, though it is saying P64, but it might not be correctly interpreted. If there are two lobed immature. So this is how vacculation looks like. Vacculation looks like. This is Dole bodies, which you see as a bluish pigment here. And this is toxic granules, which I already alluded to earlier. You can have necrobiosis in severe sepsis. And many a times we have told, our pediatrician colleagues, when I was at Sion Hospital, I used to be referred patients from PICU and I used to tell them, this is definitely bacterial infection because I'm seeing necrobiotic cells. These are all necrobiotic cells. These are not hypersegmented neutrophils. They are nice neutrophils which have proper segments. These are all broken segments, see, separated from each other. This is a ring nucleus. This is all necrobiotic changes of infection. Then you can have a patient who has granules in its lymphocytes and neutrophils. This is typical albinism with a Shade-Higashi syndrome. Then you can have lymphocytosis, monocytosis, both can happen in certain conditions which are listed here. Lymphocytosis is common in most of the chronic infections as well as acute viral infections, whereas eosinophilia and parasitic infections and fungal infections, and GVHD in a transplanted patient. Now coming to another very interesting CBC, a low hemoglobin, low RBC count, 100 MCV, 19 RDW. So it was a macrocytic with a little wide RDW with anemia, with very high white cell counts with this scatterogram and 35,000 platelets. Because we have two cell lines reduced, but one cell line very high, you must think of leukemia. And this child was a leukemic. I've not put the final report, but he turned out an acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Similarly, there could be children who have a low hemoglobin with a MCV which is near normal. RDW is not picked up because there is a biphasic peak over here. That means there is macro as well as micro both. Okay, and you have a white cell count but with relative lymphocytosis. So you can see here lymphocytes are plenty, neutrophils are fewer, and therefore and a platelet count which is normal. So this could be a significant leukemia like picture again, though the platelets are low, and this also turned out to be a leukemia. So lymphoblasts may be misinterpreted as lymphocytes. Now look at this one particular CBC where you have very low white cell count. When you have very low or very high, you should still think of leukemia because you can have a subleukemic leukemia. And here you have again anemia, you have very low platelets, and see his WBC histogram, hardly any neutrophils. And you look at the differential, 78% lymphocytes with neutrophils not even picked up in the differential. So this is typical of, again, probably leukemia. And if when we looked at the patients, this was another one, but let me show you this one first. So when we looked at his smear, they were all blasts. Nothing was a lymphocyte, all lymphoblasts. And this patient had a 181,000 white cells, 3 gram hemoglobin, 11,000 platelets. You can see this small peak after the lymphocytes. This is again a typical peak of blasts. And with such a high count, you have this type of peak, you should suspect blast. And again, here you see 59% lymphocytes, though neutrophils are there, but blasts were 96%. So this is typical again of how leukemia can be diagnosed on histograms. Of course, atypical lymphocytes in infectious mononucleosis is a known phenomenon in various other viral infections, including even COVID. In fact, they look so much like blast cells. You can see the nucleoli very vividly here, so nicely. But they are not blasts because of the type of cytoplasm they have, the skirting of the RBCs that happens. This is typical of atypical lymphocytes. You have monocytes in various conditions, tuberculosis, syphilis, mononucleosis. You can have basophilia in certain conditions. Chronic myeloid leukemia should be suspected in basophilia. And immature granulocytes can be sometimes is normal in a healthy marrow, but not in the peripheral blood. So in peripheral blood, you should think of infection mainly, inflammation, and myeloproliferative disorders. I just put one slide of COVID-19 and CBC because I thought this would interest us and we should be aware of what's happening with these children. Very few children, we have seen only one child in our center with COVID positive who was a CML who was post-transplant day 47, had come with fever and we were worried for him. We kept him in isolation ward, and then we thought because we may not be able to manage his isolation completely because we are a transplant unit, we referred him to SRCC and they took him up, and he was discharged within 4 days after that, and he's fine now. He's negative for COVID. But they can have leukopenia. Leukopenia is mainly lymphopenia. It's not neutropenia. In fact, neutrophils are nearly always normal. And lymphopenia can be moderate to severe. The severer the lymphopenia, the severer the clinical manifestation and chances of ICU admission. Now, what are the types of lymphocytes which are reduced? If you see, all T and B cells are reduced. CD3, CD4, CD8 are T cells, CD19 is B cells. So both are reduced, but there is no reversal of CD4-CD8 ratio, which is seen in HIV and CMV infection. Thrombocytopenia is very mild and does not really cause any problems. Hemoglobin can be reduced and monocytes can be reduced in patients who are in ICU, critical patients. By and large, you won't see. And you can have a leukoerythroblastic reaction in some cases. In one of the case reports from Michigan, they have reported this particular paper. This is all from Singapore. This study is from Singapore in 69 patients. So I think I would not really worry so much about leukoerythroblastic reaction because that has only been reported in one single patient. I'm really not going to deal with this, but nowadays we have IMI channels also in counters which are hi-fi, and they can give you immature white cells also in a scatterogram as well as counts. So there are many other novel parameters which one can use. I already told you about immature reticulocyte fraction. Reticulated platelets have not been very useful. Immature granulocytes help us, but again are not available to all of us. These have already dealt with nucleated RBCs. RBC fragments can sometimes be counted as platelets. Retic hemoglobin can help in iron deficiency diagnosis. I think these are few things which I thought I'll just put for those who are interested in advancing their hematology further, but not really in routine practice. So I think that would be my last slide. I thank my team, which always help me work in my hospital. I thank all patients who give me an opportunity to learn every single day. And thank you everybody for being there and listening to this talk. I'll stop sharing so we can.
Thank you, ma'am. On the behalf of KAP, thank you for your wonderful and informative lecture. There are some people born to make miracles, and you are one of them, ma'am. Thank you.
God. Thank you so much. How much is, there is a question, how much is the incidence of EDTA antibodies in general population? I'll answer that. It's about 10 to 15%. It is not very low. And therefore, it is a real situation. I know of a person whose father was being seen by a surgeon for prostate surgery, and the CBC showed a platelet count which was about 60,000. And they kept doing the CBC again and again and telling him to see a hematologist. Then he went to Dr. B.C. Mehta, and Dr. B.C. Mehta, who was a stalwart hematologist, he just told him, let me look at your peripheral smear. He looked at the peripheral smear and found platelet clumps. So he said, your platelets are normal, you can go ahead with surgery. But the surgeon was not convinced by just Dr. B.C. Mehta saying this. So then Dr. B.C. Mehta told them, you do a citrated anticoagulated blood, and that will help you to understand that the platelet count is totally normal. And they did a citrated sample on the counter and got a 3 lakh platelet count, and then they took him up for surgery very safely. So these are real situations. Do you want me to take 1 or 2 questions that are there?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Now, someone has asked approach to normocytic normochromic anemia. That itself is a lecture. Sometimes when I talk on approach to anemia, I will definitely deal with it in detail. Then there is a question on neutrophil lymphocyte ratio in COVID-19. So as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Vaidya has asked this question. As I mentioned earlier, that lymphocytes are reduced. You neutrophils are normal. So naturally the ratio of neutrophil ratio lymphocyte will go up. Neutrophils are near normal, 3000 to 3500 in COVID patients. Someone has asked, rule of three does exist. I don't know. What does that mean? I don't know. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. You can stop here only.
Yeah.
We'll meet on next Thursday.
Yeah. You want me to do every Thursday or every alternate Thursday will be better?
As you suggest, ma'am. What is convenient for you?
I think alternate Thursday will be better.
Okay, ma'am.
Because
We'll
I
plan
have
according.
other talks also, so then it is difficult to cope up.
Okay,
Okay.
no issue, ma'am.
Yeah? Okay. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you
Welcome.
for such information.
Thank you all
and nice
participants.
topic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Take care and stay safe.
So
Vaishnavi,